Penn State football is in the middle of a two-day, very important recruiting run for the class of 2023. I'm your host, Frank Carr, filling in for Ryan Snyder. Greg Pickel, our recruiting reporter, is going to talk to us about what's coming up today and review Tony Rojas' commitment to the Nittany Lions yesterday. Stay tuned for all of that on the BWI Daily Edition. Greg Pickel, as I promised, I'm a man of my word. He is on the show today filling in for Ryan Snyder, who is either temporarily homeless or is moving his house, or I don't know. I think the next time you see him, he's going to be in a different location here on the BWI Daily Edition. So, Greg, thanks for filling in. Thanks for bringing your expertise to the show here.
T-Frank, I have big shoes to fill, and I don't know if I'm going to fill them for Ryan, but I'm going to certainly give it a shot here as we close out the week.
So, I have no doubt, Greg, you deliver all the time. I have no doubt that you'll deliver here. And if you don't, you're not invited back.
Fair enough. We'll make that deal now.
I desperately need you. You can't leave. So
I'm playing from a position of strength, T-Frank.
Yeah, it's a very smart place to play. Tony Rojas committed the Nittany Lions yesterday. It is a celebration Thursday heading into possibly a celebration weekend. It's Arts Fest here in State College. So what's your read? Give us your review of what you saw yesterday and kind of Tony Rojas, his impact on this class.
Yeah, easily the most fascinating part of this recruitment is how it seesawed back and forth, T-Frank. For a while, we saw Penn State as the leader, and that was the case kind of for the majority of the recruitment. But over the last few months, we saw Clemson kind of make a run toward the top. We saw Georgia kind of make a run toward the top. He did officially visit the Tigers, of course, never made it to Athens for an all-expenses-paid trip, so that kind of knocked the Bulldogs out of play. But just a really interesting recruitment, one that was definitely not like any of the other ones Penn State's had this cycle, where a four-star player, an on-300 player that Penn State was seen as the leader for, they had to fend off some challenges, and they weren't just, run-of-the-mill programs. They were two powerful programs with playoff experience and things like that. So it's a tremendous get for Penn State. Obviously, you have, if you're watching this on YouTube, you see the rankings there. He's highly regarded across the recruiting industry. And, I mean, he's a player. I can see him coming to Penn State, and, one thing he'll probably need to do is put some weight on. But all told, he strikes me as a guy that might be able to help you from day one. And when you're looking at that linebacker room, T-Frank, there's a lot of young, inexperienced guys there, and Penn State needs to keep replenishing that room so it doesn't find itself in quite the position it finds itself in right now. So all told, a big get for Penn State. Rojas obviously had numerous suitors, and the Lions went out over two pretty big-time programs.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, a recruiting journey that started with Penn State. He admitted to our Ryan Snyder at an Under Armour camp early in March that Penn State was his favorite school. And despite all of what you just said, seemingly Penn State remained his favorite school throughout. And by the way, if you want to check out what Tony Rojas is bringing to the team, you can check out our breakdown, the commitment. Yesterday afternoon, we have our breaking news commitment videos after Penn State commitment. So you can check that out here on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're checking us out on one of our podcast platforms, as always, thank you for being one of the 8,000 people that listen to the BWI Daily Edition. That makes me blush a little bit. I love you all. But we only do the commitment videos on YouTube. So if you do want to check those out and you didn't know about them previously, go check them out over on our YouTube channel. It's Penn State. If you Google Penn State football, or if you go into YouTube and you search Penn State football, we'll come up there. So you can check out Blue White Illustrated's breakdown of Tony Rojas. But coming up tonight, maybe more, because Tamir Robinson, another four-star linebacker from Pittsburgh, is making his decision tonight at 6:15. So we're going to give you a preview of that. So where do the Nittany Lions stand heading into this commitment this evening, Greg?
Yeah, you heard Ryan and I talk about it on the Tuesday recruiting show, T-Frank, and Penn State obviously felt really good about Tony Rojas going into Thursday, and it feels really good about Tamir Robinson going into Friday. The Pittsburgh Brashear linebacker stands 6'3", 225. On-3 consensus and the on-3 rankings have him as a four-star. He's number 126 in the consensus, 159 by on-3, so not a huge difference there. And Penn State, T-Frank, has really been a leader in this recruitment for a long time as well. Virginia Tech and Miami are his other two finalists finalist. He made official visits to both of those programs. Of course, Brent Pry's relationship with him during his time at Penn State, I think, earned the Hokies that visit. But all told, this felt like Penn State's recruitment to lose for quite some time, and it still feels that way heading into the announcement. He'll have 3 hats on the table, of course, that we're expecting it to be a little after 6:15 tonight. And, if you're Penn State, I think you have to love where you're standing right now. Penn State's a 95% favorite in the On3 recruiting prediction machine that's powered by a couple picks from our experts at the network, including Ryan Snyder. And so you look at what Penn State could get here. I mean, this is an extremely talented player. He is coming off an injury, so I think that's something to keep in mind. His ranking could change possibly based on that fact, but all told, everyone knows what he's capable of. That injury didn't sour anyone on him, and he saw a lot of schools during his recruitment. And so this is a well-informed decision he's about to make. And like we said, Penn State seems to be in the driver's seat here, as they have all along. That didn't change during the official visit cycle. And I know that Miami certainly pushed hard, but this looks like a victory for the Lions as we wait for his announcement.
I have such a hard time. I want to start scouting him right away. But that we'll save that for a commitment video if it comes later tonight. Probably 6:45. Whenever he makes the decision officially, that's when we'll release the video. But I did do a little bit of pre-scouting, taking a look at him this week, and 6'3", 225 pounds. You can see it, so it's not any sort of like revelation. He has a massive frame, Greg. I mean, elite reach too. So he's not just tall. He has the arm length to be the prototype linebacker that you want, that can cover space, that can get in passing lanes. Like, he's a very exciting prospect. So Penn State, they can secure 2 players in this class this week heading into the weekend that could help them with a question that came up yesterday on the BWI Daily on the mailbag show that I wanted to ask you, because I think this is a better question to ask here on our recruiting show, because get some insight from some of the experts and some of the people that are more knowledgeable and well-versed in the recruiting rankings and all that stuff than just me. So Nitwit13 asked yesterday, Ryan and I have talked about having 15 4-stars as the threshold that Penn State needs to finish with a top 10 class. First thought is who's left on the board. We're talking about a couple of them now. So if there's any other guys you want to throw out here at the end once I'm done reading. And then the question here is, though, does Birchmeier finish as a 5-star? And are there any other current 3-stars that you think could get that bump to a 4-star to raise the average overall and maybe replace internally some of that average star ranking? So let's start with that last part first, and we'll work back to the beginning. Who do you have an eye on that you think could outplay their current ranking?
Yeah, the one guy I'm really interested to see if he'll move up T-Frank is Yazid Haynes, the wide receiver out of North Penn High School in Lansdale, Pennsylvania. He is someone who Georgia recently started pushing for, even though he's committed to Penn State because of how well he did throughout the course of his season and his testing numbers and all of that. So I'm really curious to see if his senior season maybe moves him up the rankings for a little bit. I don't have his numbers in front of me at the moment, but he is certainly not the highest rated guy in Penn State's class. I think he's around the 700s nationally, and you're going to have to move quite a bit to get yourself in the conversation to be a 4-star when you're that low in the 3-star ranks. But he has the talent to do it. He has the speed to do it, in my opinion. Obviously, I think the fact that Georgia validated what Penn State did, and not that Penn State needed validated by any stretch of the imagination, because as we know, they're one of the better schools in the country at evaluating talent early, T-Frank, and getting an offer out there. And obviously he was once committed to Rutgers, so Rutgers was doing that as well. But yeah, I mean, I think that if you look at the board now of guys who are committed, who are 3-stars, he's the one that I think could maybe make the biggest jump with a very strong senior season. He just has all the tools that I think major conferences are looking for when they scout receivers. And I think that with some more exposure, he might rise the rankings.
Yeah, he's the second to, I believe he's the second to last player ranked in Penn State's class, 756 nationally in the On3 consensus, an 86.6 in the consensus, and 83 in the On3 internal rankings, both that make him a 3-star. But part of that, Greg, and you mentioned this, is, how he did on camp circuit this year. That's part of it. Having that testing information, having those numbers to back up. 6'1", he's a big receiver with, a big for modern receivers. He's not a 6'3", 6'4" guy, but he's got a long frame, 4.39 speed. That alone, having that information, maybe he didn't have that stuff previously recorded. Right. I think that in itself will give him a bump up the rankings, and then what he does this fall can cement that stuff. So I think you got a great pick there for that question. So that is most of the stuff I wanted to talk to you about when it came to recruiting, because it's a big weekend. And I did this last week or yesterday with a question. We need to answer the other part of the question. This is what
I was going to ask you. Yeah, that's okay. We'll get back to it.
Multi-layered questions. I get all fixated on the part we were just doing. Okay, so Alex Birchmeier, do you believe he finishes as a 5-star?
Yeah, so he was briefly an on-3 consensus 5-star, and now he's dropped right below that. So in the consensus, he's number 32. In on-3's rankings, he's number 33. On-3 is going to have 32 5-stars, representing the number of picks in the first round of the NFL draft when all is said and done. T-Frank, he's an outstanding football player. He's an outstanding wrestler. I'm not exactly sure why he dropped a couple spots, and we're talking literally a couple spots between 4 and 5-star. It's a very fine line, but I'd be surprised if he's not back in that conversation by the time the 2023 class signs and is signed, sealed, and delivered and good to go. I just think that when you look at this Penn State team, this Penn State program, they've recruited him for a long time for a reason. They think he can be a future mauler, and those kind of guys typically end up with 5-star status. So to me, I think that he will end up there. Is it going to happen overnight? No. Is it going to happen during the next rankings update? Maybe, but probably not. But by the end of the cycle, I think we will see him as a 5-star across the board.
So this is slanderous, right? And I don't believe what I'm about to say. But is he big enough? That's the question. Because, talking to Charles Power, the way he ranks quarterbacks, and I'm now extrapolating this to the rest of football, is the only other time that players are organized and ranked and codified this way is in the NFL draft. So using that as the template for the on-3 rankings, you then have to ask the questions of, okay, is his arm length, is his weight, is his height, all the measurables that the NFL obsesses over, does he check all of those boxes? And then is he so good that you would then say, you know what, forget it, I don't care. He's a Tyler Linderbaum, who is going to be an interior player that's drafted in the first round sort of thing. So that's really I think the dichotomy here of is he 33? Is he the first player in the second round, or is he a true first round pick? Some of the measurables may not get him so securely, and if there are other offensive linemen, especially tackles, this is something Ryan has talked about previously, of if you're a tackle, you get preference because you've got the length.
Right.
You've got that size already baked in. But then the question is, are you a good football player? He's a 5-star football player, and I think he's a 5-star physical talent as well, but there is probably, kind of going back to the conversation we had about Jahan Dotson this year in the NFL draft, is he a first-round physical presence? He was the 4th receiver taken. They just all were taken before pick 20. So that was kind of how the draft shook out this year. So I do think that that's going to be a close call there. Do you think Javen Williams, speaking of physical talent, has the opportunity to be a 5-star? Because he's the other player in the ballpark, although he is much lower down. I think he's about 30 spots lower right now than Alex Birchmeier.
Yeah, so I'm just pulling up his rankings quick to make sure I got him right. So in the on-3 consensus, he's number 65 overall, number 3 interior offensive lineman. But on-3, of course, has been so much higher than the industry on the Penn State commit, Javen Williams, since really the last, 6 months probably. He's a 5-star according to on-3. He's ranked as the number 11 prospect in the nation, as one of the best offensive linemen, or rather the best interior offensive lineman in the country. So, I mean, I think that obviously I don't expect on-3's opinion to change of him. They love the measurables. They love the track, what he does on the track and field aspect, and how that can translate onto the football field, and how it has translated onto the football field. So will he be a 5-star across the board? It's a good question. I mean, you look at the industry comparison, which of course you can find in every on-3 profile, just like Javen Williams. I mean, 247 Sports has him at number 70 nationally, Rivals 179, ESPN 45. So it's going to require some movement, I guess, from other services to get him into that consensus 5-star conversation. Can it happen? Yes. Will it happen? Let's see. The summer re-rankings are coming here over the next couple of weeks. And so I think we'll have a better feel for that, T-Frank, once we see where he moves this time around.
When he committed, I believe we had Ross Tucker on the show. I believe Ross said that he was only 17. So, I don't know that he's going to grow more, but is there a little wiggle room where he gets a little taller, gets a little longer?
Right.
Is he seen as a tackle prospect? I think that plays into it. And the thing is, Nitwit 13, the reason I got all confused is because he asked one of the questions that I wanted to ask you to end the segment. So my brain jumped right ahead because he asks, who are the other players available left for Penn State? And that is kind of where we are heading into the Tamir Robinson decision tonight. We are, again, the recruiting prediction machine has him as a 90+%. I think you said 95%. So
yes,
a soft yes already there. Who are the other players out there on your short list that you think Penn State should go after or should get before the season starts? Really, once the focus shifts away from recruiting and we're talking about the season ahead.
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, Evan Link is going to start this conversation every single time. He could pop out an announcement to Penn State, Stanford, Michigan, somebody else at any moment. His recruitment has gone very quiet, and there's no real good reason for that we can tell, other than that's just the way he's preferring to go about things as he comes down the stretch here. So I would be very surprised, T-Frank, if he does not have a decision made by the time his senior season starts. So the clock's ticking. It's July 15th. So obviously at this point, you have to make up your mind at some point, and if you're going to do it before your senior season. So let's keep an eye out on him. He's one. Obviously, Kevion Keys is another one he's going to announce in late August, 4-star linebacker out of Virginia. That it's a head-to-head battle right now with North Carolina. We'll see if Florida can get into the mix, but he's a 4-star. Carmelo Taylor's a 4-star receiver out of Virginia. So there are some options out there for Penn State. And let's not forget, you never know if they're going to flip a quarterback and what his star rating is going to be. So let's not rule that out either. So, when you talk about that mark of 15 4-stars, Penn State has every opportunity in my mind to get there. They're going to have to close some deals and win some battles. Yes. But can they do that? I think absolutely.
So that receiver conversation, I want to drill down a little bit more there because you've got a couple of guys that you've recruited. And, I'm using Ryan's words here. Don't count out Cam Seldon. And he's talked a little bit about some other guys that they would continue to recruit. So would you take 4 this cycle? Would you not take as many guys? What would you think there?
Well, I think at this point, you're probably looking at just one more. Now, could you get in the situation where you have a scholarship or two left, T-Frank, and your guy is the best available and he plays receiver, or he's considered an athlete and could be in the secondary, or could be a receiver, kind of like we talked about with Mekhi Flowers and Christian Driver in the class of 2023, or 2 rather. Could we find ourselves in that situation and looking at the board and saying, okay, Penn State probably sees these guys as the best available, even though they might have X number of guys at this position or that position. The guy is too talented to leave out there. Well, let's get him to campus and we'll figure out what we want to do with him then. So is that a possibility? Yes. Do I think Penn State probably only ends up with one more receiver, barring no decommitments or anything, though? I think that's probably going to end up being the case.
Yeah, it's a fair point. It just, when we're talking about that receiver position and you've got a couple of guys you've recruited very hard and are superiorly talented, that I guess is the question. Do you want to fill that spot and to be comfortable with what you have, or do you want to go after some of those other players and continue to pursue guys that are already committed? But, that's what that wiggle room is there for. Well, I want to get to something we have not talked about here on the BWI Daily Edition that we should have. And we're going to take a quick break from football to talk about wrestling. And you are a wrestling reporter. Big news. Penn State is not losing Cale Sanderson, one of the most winning coaches of all time in any sport ever, or at anything ever. So tell us about the details with Cale Sanderson and what's gone down with his contract and his status at Penn State.
Well, it was fascinating because the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette interviewed Sandy Barber, who made the comment that the deal was done, and that's how we reached this point, T-Frank. I don't think Penn State and Cale Sanderson really had any intention of having this information out there, but it came up in an interview with Sandy Barber, and then Penn State confirmed it and said they would not be releasing any more details, and that kind of is that. So I would not hold your – yeah. Right. For us anyway. I'm not sure about for Cale, but at any rate, I would not hold your breath waiting for the terms of this agreement to be disclosed or anything like that. It's not going to happen, I don't think. So, obviously it doesn't really matter, right? I mean, it's irrelevant. The guy is worth whatever he can command whatever he wants. If I was paying Tom Brand's X and, X, Cale Sanderson should be getting Y, which of course is more. So, I think it's clear that he wants to be at Penn State. Penn State obviously would be crazy to not want to keep him here. So it's good news. Obviously, I don't know if I don't know if there was a enormous amount of stress around this getting done. I know there's probably a little bit just with how long it seemed to take, but ultimately they were able to strike a deal and get something done. Again, we don't know what the terms of that deal are, but it doesn't matter because Penn State, as you said, is keeping the best wrestling coach in the sport and one of the best coaches, regardless of sport, in state college for a little while longer. And obviously that's good news for Penn State as they continue to recruit very well and get ready for the 2022-2023 season, T-Frank, which is going to be here before we know it.
Patrick Kraft, new AD, talked a lot about Cale Sanderson, bringing him up multiple times, talking about how success can work at Penn State outside of traditional revenue sports, and also the model for greatness at Penn State, which is obviously a fair point to make. With this contract, I guess, does, without knowing any of the details and knowing any of the things that are a part of it, how much does this help Penn State continue this run with the wrestling program of stability and dominance in the sport?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Intermat rankings, they have, I think 7 or 8 guys ranked, the 4 of them at number 1, numerous guys in the top 5. I mean, it's clear that they are going to be the prohibitive favorite going into the 2022-2023 season, which is usually the case. But, man, this year, I think they are cut above just about everybody else across the country as long as injuries and things like that go their way. They continue to bring in top talent that wins all over the place. You know, we'll see if Ohio State transfer Will Betancourt, who just finished second at Pan Am, can factor into the battle at 125, or if that's Robbie Howard's job to lose. We'll see. We'll have a lot of time to break all that down and discuss it. But ultimately, you want to keep this ship moving forward, and you want, obviously, it's not just Cale Sanderson. It's Cody Sanderson. It's Casey Cunningham. It's all of the other people that have been in this program for a long time and make it go as smoothly and as efficiently as it does. And it is a smooth and efficient operation. There is no question about that. So, big news for Penn State wrestling, big news for Penn State wrestling fans. And yeah, the train just keeps rolling along down the tracks, T-Frank. There's no stopping it in sight.
So that's an interesting thing about this particular situation with Penn State wrestling. As you mentioned, there's no end in sight for dominance. And that one is what I want to bring up next, is when we're discussing NIL at Penn State and we're discussing where the money is going, one thing that continually crops up is the wrestling team, that they are doing very well for themselves in this new era of name, image, and likeness, which is, by the way, I think how a lot of this is, we all think of like the should go. That's how it should go, is some of the non-revenue sports that are very popular and very successful. Some women's sports that are very popular and very successful can finally make money off their name, image, and likeness. And this is an area where Penn State has, supported this particular program eagerly out of the gate. How much of an advantage is that, even on top of what they already have? How much, I don't want to say how much more dominant, because I don't know that you can be, but what does NIL do for these for the program and for these players to kind of cement what's already there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think that's the next step, right? So you look at Roman Bravo Young. I think he might still come back to Penn State if the NIL stuff isn't here, but I think that was a huge part of his decision to return and chase another national title. And I'm sure there's some other guys in that room, maybe a Max Dean, maybe some others who decided to come back because of the opportunities available. And I think you make a very important point, T-Frank. We focus a lot of our effort and attention on and things on football and NIL and football, and how does it impact football. And both at Penn State and across the country, some of your biggest earners are not going to be football players. Now, look, your biggest stars on the football field, you're going to have them obviously at the top of the list. But if you go look at the NIL database at On3, which you can find at on3.com, and then click NIL at the top toolbar, you're going to see it's a lot of athletes from other sports too that are cashing in on this. And it is, women's basketball players or soccer players or male gymnastics athletes or wrestlers. I mean, it's not just football and basketball, even though that's where the attention goes a lot of the time, because we're framing this NIL conversation in so many ways, T-Frank, on recruiting, even though it's not supposed to have anything to do with recruiting. And that's why it goes towards football and basketball. And we forget about, oh, wait a second, the athletes that are already here in variety of sports are making good money off of this as they move throughout their career. So very important for Penn State wrestling, but very important for numerous other programs too that don't reside in the Lash Building and or at Bryce Jordan Center.
And it's just, and so framing the conversation again against football, some of the I've seen very little pushback on paying Roman Bravo Young, right? There's been very little conversation about, well, do I want it was just like yes and, in terms of the money that was donated, and this is again from my perspective outside looking in as not an expert or not in depth in the wrestling program. And that's deserved. My point is that all of that is deserved. It's just interesting that, and not unexpected, but winning made everyone very excited to donate to the wrestling program, and the really the passion of that program in general generated that. And one of the points I've made is just that, it helps if you want to win. So like if you want Penn State football or Penn State basketball to be competitive, and it's just this proof of purchase that I think is really interesting, that some organizations, some other schools, they don't like, they see it as the avenue to success. And then a lot of other places, even successful football programs, are saying, yeah, well, win and then we'll give you money. And that, it just seems to be backwards to me. So if you already were in the situation of you were winning, you get even more advantages now. And then you have to, like, there's some sort of like proof that you have to have, when it's really, they really, if you want to be successful, should not be linked to success.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a really good point, because obviously I think there's a lot of people out there, and I'm not just saying this about Penn State fans, I'm saying it about whatever fan base you want, but they look at it and say, why am I going to give player X, why am I going to donate to collective Y, who's then going to give player X Z amount of money, and then player, whoever it is, goes out and throws 3 interceptions and loses to the biggest rival, or the running back fumbles, or the defensive back gives up a touchdown in the fourth quarter or overtime. And, the team, why am I donating to a team that's 7-6 or 7-5 or 8-4 or whatever? I think that is the way a lot of people look at it, as opposed to what you're getting at, which is, you know what, this is a way we can get better than that. We can find better players, keep better players, instead of seeing them go elsewhere for better opportunities elsewhere. So, yeah, I think it's a very good point you make, and it's something that not just Penn State fans, but college football fans are going to have to change their mindset on if they want to be a part of this process.
You said it much more eloquently than I did. Although I have to say, I'm getting a little triggered by your X, Y's, and Z's in sentences.
Yeah, probably a little bit too much of that today. Yeah,
because it feels like a math like I feel like it's math class. That's all. Like I'm seeing algebra and I'm getting all sort of all up in my own head about math. So if we can avoid any math problems on the show,
we're going to avoid that moving forward. Yes.
But with NIL, it fits. Like it's a perfect example. But let's.
It is a math problem. Then. Yes.
Let's get back to football, because we are just a few days away from the start of Penn State training camp on the 31st. So we need to start looking ahead at the season. I want to get your general thoughts. I know I have something I want to ask you in a little bit, but biggest things you're looking at coming into training camp. What is on Greg Pickel's brain about the Penn State 2022 season?
Yeah, I think it's just get to September 1st healthy, and let's start answering some questions. I mean, you can talk about it with us in the Lions Den forum at bluewhiteillustrated.com. You can read about it as fans debate on social media and what have you, and you can probably find someone to talk about it with at the grocery store, or your favorite watering hole, or wherever you like to hang out. I mean, there's so many questions, and we've kind of beat the dead horse over and over and over again. Is PJ Mustipher going to be healthy? Is Sean Clifford going to be better? Can Mike Yursich figure it out in year 2? Is Manny Diaz bringing the right defense in? Can the linebackers stay healthy? Who's going to start next to Jair Brown? Is Nick Singleton going to be a star? I mean, we can sit here and we will endlessly discuss this stuff, but I think the thing I'm most looking forward to is let's get to September 1st. Penn State, obviously, like every other school, wants to get through camp healthy. And then let's start finding out what we're working with here, because I think that from the outside looking in, there are some very good reasons to be optimistic. And there are also some very good reasons to say, this team might have some major obstacles that it can't overcome, and the schedule is one of them. So I think that's what I'm most interested in. But obviously, the big thing is, can Sean Clifford and Mike Yursich team up with this very good stable of running backs they have and receivers, even though Jahan Dotson's gone, and can the offensive line be better this year? It's an annual question, T-Frank. I hope we're not still asking it on a few years down the road during a daily, or BWI Daily rather, but we could still be. We'll see. So that's kind of where I'm at this point. Let's get to game day and get some of these questions answered.
Now, and I want to have a sign behind me that says "Dead Horse Hitching Post."
Yes.
Because yeah, that's you're right. That's exactly what the offseason is. It's the same question.
It's July. Yep.
You wander around in a circle and you come back to this question and go, look at this question we don't have an answer to, and then you wander around in a circle again. And yeah. So let's get to something fun that we're gonna be doing here on the show over the next couple of weeks, is looking ahead at some of the more detailed positions, detailed conversations about the class and the underclassmen. It seems that there's a lot of talent coming up the ranks now for Penn State. Which underclassman do you think has a chance to make a leap up the depth chart this fall and either take a spot or be a heavy contributor? Who's on your mind heading into camp?
Yeah, my pick is Harrison Wallace, T-Frank, the receiver, who had a really nice acrobatic catch in the blue-white game during the 2-point conversion portion of that blue-white event, I should say. It wasn't a game. But at any rate, Harrison Wallace, I think, has excited a lot of people ever since he was in high school, kind of really good on the basketball court with dunking and explosion and jumping and leaping and things like that. So I think that when he puts it all together as a football player, as a pass catcher, as a blocker, that he is going to really turn some heads. So he's my pick. They call him Trey. So sometimes you might hear James Franklin refer to Trey Wallace, and that is still Harrison Wallace. It takes a little bit to get used to, but it's the same person. So he's my pick. I just think that in a receiver's room where you should feel pretty good about Parker Washington and Mitchell Tinsley, I think we're waiting to see who's number 3. Yep. Is it Malik Mega? Is it Keandre Lambert-Smith? Is it Harrison Wallace, or is it somebody else? And time will tell. I mean, the first 2 guys on that list have done a little bit in games, but not much, but have all kinds of practice field exploits that we hear about. And Wallace is an explosive guy who may be able to race his way into the mix here. So he's my pick, T-Frank.
Yeah, it's a great pick, and a guy that I think has the talent to do that, because one of the things that Penn State has not really had recently, other than Jahan Dotson, is somebody who can play above the rim. And literally a basketball prospect in Trey Wallace is somebody who can do that. So having a large catch radius down the field, I know Malik Mega is big, but we haven't really seen him use that size in any situation. Not that he's had
he's done it in practice. He's done it in practice a ton, though, T-Frank. Just don't forget that part. We just need to see it on game day.
Yes, it's very important that he does it 4 days a week, except for on Saturdays. But that's exactly the point. Who's going to be that guy? Because the tight ends did not necessarily produce that. So can you get a receiver to do that for you as well? That provides a depth of types of talent, let alone the depth of talent on the roster. The guy I would go with, I'm torn between the safety and the tight end position, because Tyler Warren keeps showing up all off season and doing the right things. And he showed up on the field in flashes last year, and he just didn't have a lot of opportunities, but he's the strongest tight end. He's the biggest tight end. By a couple of pounds, maybe he loses to Theo Johnson. But when you combine size and playing size, I just see that he's going to take some reps from somebody. He's going to be a factor. I think he's too good to keep off the field. And he seems to be a fan favorite. He seems to be a player favorite, does all the things the right way. So that's my guy. As much as I wanted to say Zakee Wheatley, I talked about him yesterday on the Daily. So I'll go with Tyler Warren here to end this particular conversation. Anything that we left on the table, anything you want to discuss before we get out of here? We did not bring up Bo Nickel. So is there an update with Bo Nickel? His MMA,
so the former I'll leave you with 2 things, T-Frank. So number 1, Bo Nickel is fighting in Dana White's, I don't have the name in front of me here, and I don't want to mess it up. 1 sec here, I'll pull that up. Dana White's UFC Contender Series here in a little bit, and that could punch his ticket, even though he's very young in his fighting career and his MMA career, to possibly land in the UFC very quickly. So keep an eye out for that. He has started off his career with a win and has looked good so far. So he is someone to keep an eye on if you're a UFC fan or just like supporting Penn State guys in other areas of their athletic pursuits. Once they leave Penn State, you're going to want to keep an eye on him. And then, the other thing, T-Frank, is just, again, remember, it's July. We could sit here all day and talk about all kinds of different topics. And by the time you listen to this show, you might find a whole new topic that is dominating BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, whether it's a commit, whether it's roster news, whether it's something previewing, getting ready for Big Ten Media Days, things like that. I know it feels like a slow time of the year, and it is one of the slower times of the year, but guess what? There's a lot that happens quickly. We saw it with Elliott Washington a week ago today. You never know when a commitment's right around the corner, or when a flip's right around the corner, or when some kind of big change that impacts Penn State is looming. but you'll always find out about it at Blue White Illustrated. So stay tuned. I know we're getting close to camp and everyone's excited about that, but there are some developments still in the works, I think, that we'll learn about in the coming days.
Couldn't have said it better myself, so I'm not going to try. That does it this week for the BWI Daily Edition. Once again, make sure you're just around your computer tonight, 6:30-ish. I don't really know when, but Tamir Robinson is going to make his decision. And if he chooses the Nittany Lions, we will be on YouTube breaking down the commitment, his story getting to Penn State, and, of course, some film analysis from me breaking down everything about that commitment if he chooses the Nittany Lions, which is something we're expecting. So that'll do it today. Sort of, for the BWI YouTube channel. I'm your host, Frank Carr. We will be back for sure on Monday with the BWI Daily Edition. Make sure you hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. We will talk to you then.